Hey there, night wanderers. Welcome to A Day Long Ago. Tonight we're journeying to Mars to experience a day in the life of a Mars colony artist. Someone living and creating art on humanity's first permanent settlement on the Red Planet. This is a sleep story, a relaxing bedtime story for adults designed to help you fall asleep while exploring what daily life might be like for an artist on Mars. Expect rust-colored dust that gets into everything, gravity that makes you feel like you could almost fly, and a sky that shifts from butterscotch to slate gray depending on the atmospheric dust load. Fair warning, you probably won't recognize what counts as normal anymore after watching someone paint landscapes, where the horizon curves wrong and sunsets glow blue. So before we drift 140 million miles from Earth, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to A Day Long Ago, but only if you genuinely enjoy these relaxing bedtime stories and historical sleep stories. And while you're at it, drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always wonderful to see fellow travelers checking in from Sao Paulo to Seoul, from midnight to midday. Now settle into your blankets, maybe adjust your pillow one more time, and let's ease into tonight's sleep journey together. The first pale light creeps across your small sleeping pod, a gentle glow that mimics Earth's sunrise, but arrives 39 minutes and 35 seconds later than your body expects. This is Sol 247 of your residency at Meridiani Station, and your circadian rhythm still hasn't fully adjusted to Mars time, that peculiar 24-hour, 39-minute rotation that stretches each day just enough to notice. You stir beneath a thermal blanket designed by engineers who understood that homesickness feels colder at night, its fabric patterned with constellations visible from both worlds. Your quarters measure roughly 2 meters by 3 meters, compact but carefully designed. The walls curve gently, printed from Martian concrete mixed with polymer binding agents, their surface a warm terracotta that reminds you of adobe houses you once photographed in New Mexico. Someone back on Earth thought that aesthetic choice through, knowing colonists would need visual warmth when everything outside looked like rust and stone. A single porthole window, triple layered and radiation shielded, offers a view of the rust-orange landscape beyond, where shadows stretch long in the low-angle morning light. Your tablet chirps softly from its charging dock, displaying vital statistics that have become your morning routine. Oxygen levels nominal. Atmospheric pressure holding steady at 6.8 millibars inside the habitat versus Mars's average 6.1 millibars outside, thin enough that exposed liquid water would boil away in moments. Temperature in your pod reads 21 degrees Celsius, comfortable, while outside it's currently negative 73 degrees Celsius in these pre-dawn moments. The numbers tell a story of fragile human presence on a world that doesn't particularly care whether you survive. You reach for the control panel embedded in the wall and increase the lighting gradually, the way dawn should arrive, not like the harsh fluorescent jolt of Earth's space stations. The smart glass in your window tints slightly, protecting your adjusting eyes from the gathering brightness of a Martian sunrise. Through that small circle of reinforced polymer, you watch the sky transition from deep purple black to a peculiar peachy tan. Colors that still feel foreign, even after 8 months here. Your body feels lighter as you swing your legs out of bed, a sensation that never quite becomes normal. Mars pulls at you with only 38% of Earth's gravity, which means your 70-kilogram Earth weight translates to roughly 26.6 kilograms here. It's not weightlessness, not the free-floating drift of space, but something in between, a constant gentle reminder that you're somewhere profoundly different. Your muscles have weakened despite the mandatory 2 hours of daily resistance training, your bones gradually losing density in ways that doctors back on Earth monitor through weekly scans transmitted across millions of kilometers. You perform your morning health check with practiced efficiency. Finger prick blood test for bone markers and calcium levels, uploaded instantly to medical. Heart rate and blood pressure logged. A quick cognitive test on your tablet ensures no one's experiencing the early stages of space-induced neurological issues. 3 questions about temporal orientation to catch any circadian disruption before it becomes problematic. Everything reads green, everything nominal, the words you've learned to associate with another day of staying alive on Mars. Your sleeping clothes, soft compression garments that help maintain circulation in low gravity, get tossed into the laundry chute that leads to the station's closed-loop water recycling system. Every drop counts here, every molecule of H2O precious enough to track. You pull on your daily wear, comfortable athletic clothing with embedded biometric sensors that continuously monitor vitals and report anomalies to medical. The fabric feels familiar, but the pockets are different, designed for the peculiar needs of Mars. Reinforced patches for the fine dust that infiltrates everything, loops for tethering items in low gravity. Your morning exercise routine begins in the pod, simple stretches and bodyweight movements that would be nearly impossible at Earth gravity, but here feel almost balletic. Push-ups require conscious effort to lower yourself slowly rather than floating down. Squats need careful control on the upward portion lest you bounce too enthusiastically and crack your head on the curved ceiling. You've learned to move deliberately, to think through each motion, because momentum behaves differently when everything weighs a third of what your muscle memory expects. The communal corridor outside your pod stretches in a gentle curve, following the cylindrical structure of the habitat module. LED strips along the floor guide the way, their soft blue glow pointing toward common areas. You pass other doors, other private spaces where your fellow colonists are beginning their own waking routines. Sounds carry differently here, muted by the lower air pressure, making the habitat feel quieter than it should, as though you're all underwater in some strange terraqueous bubble. The galley waits at the end of the corridor, a space designed for both function and psychology. Real wooden tables, shipped at tremendous expense from Earth because someone understood that humans need organic materials, need something that once grew in soil and sunlight. The chairs lock magnetically to the floor, preventing the drift that would otherwise occur. Windows here are larger, offering a panoramic view of Meridiani Plain stretching toward the horizon, that odd curved horizon that sits closer than it should because Mars is smaller than home. Breakfast arrives from the 3D food printer, a marvel of engineering that transforms nutrient pastes and protein synthesizers into something resembling actual food. You select the Mediterranean breakfast option, and the machine hums for 3 minutes before producing a warm pocket of egg substitute, synthetic feta made from algae proteins, and vegetables grown in the hydroponic bays 3 levels below. It's not grandmother's cooking, but it's not bad either, and the psychological value of variety matters more than authenticity here. Around you, the morning shift gathers. There's Kenji, the geologist who's been studying subsurface ice deposits and never stops talking excitedly about ancient water channels. There's Dr. Amara Chen, the mission physician who ran a trauma center in Lagos, before deciding that Mars needed doctors willing to work 140 million miles from the nearest hospital. There's Pavel, the engineer who maintains the habitat's life support systems and plays classical guitar in the evenings when homesickness gets too heavy. These 17 people are your world now, your society, your entire immediate civilization. Conversation floats around you as you eat, mixing languages and accents in that peculiar way of international crews. Kenji jokes in Japanese accented English about the rock samples he collected yesterday. Dr. Chen mentions in Mandarin that she needs to do updated bone density scans this week. Pavel responds in Russian-tinged English that the atmospheric processor in Module 3 needs attention before next week's dust storm arrives. You listen, contributing occasionally, part of this small tribe of humans doing impossible things in impossible places. The coffee tastes almost right, synthesized from compounds that approximate caffeine and the bitter notes your brain associates with morning alertness. You cradle the warm cup in both hands, feeling its heat through the recycled ceramic that once was yesterday's dinner plates, tomorrow's breakfast bowls. Everything here gets used and reused, an endless cycle of transformation that makes you think differently about resources, about waste, about the casual abundance you took for granted on Earth. Through the wide windows, the sun continues its climb. That smaller, dimmer sun that provides 43% less light than Earth receives. The landscape outside glows in shades of rust and amber, ancient iron oxide dust giving Mars its characteristic red coloring. You're looking at a world 4 billion years old, a planet that once had flowing rivers and perhaps even oceans. All of it dried up, blown away, frozen into the polar caps when the magnetosphere died, and the atmosphere escaped to space. But you're not here as a geologist or an atmospheric scientist. You're here as an artist, one of 2 visual artists selected for Meridiani Station from 12,000 applicants back on Earth. Your role is to document, to interpret, to help humanity understand what it means to stand on another world. You're here to create beauty where beauty wasn't meant to exist, to find meaning in rust and stone and the thin thread of human ambition that stretches across the solar system. As breakfast winds down, you check your schedule on your wrist display. This morning, EVA to sketching site alpha, 2 hours surface time approved. Afternoon, studio work on commission pieces for the Mars Arts Foundation back in Houston. Evening, teaching the introductory watercolor class you've been running for interested crew members. Art as therapy for people living in a metal tube on a dead planet. The rhythm of your days has structure here, routine emerging as protection against the psychological weight of isolation. You rinse your dishes in the sonic cleaning station, technology that uses vibrations instead of precious water. Everything gets sanitized. Nothing gets wasted. The galley slowly empties as crew members disperse to their own morning responsibilities, to laboratories and maintenance bays, to communications arrays and greenhouse modules. You linger a moment at the window, watching dust devils dance across the plain in the distance, miniature tornadoes of rust-red particles that rise kilometers into the thin atmosphere before dissipating like ghosts. Someone has placed a small potted plant on the windowsill, one of the decorative succulents from the greenhouse. Its green leaves a shocking burst of earth color against all that Martian red. You touch a leaf gently, feeling its water-plump firmness, proof that life can persist even here with enough care and artificial support. It reminds you of paintings you used to do of botanical subjects, the way light played through leaves, the architecture of veins and stems. That was another lifetime ago, before the selection process, before the training, before you said goodbye to everyone you loved and climbed aboard a spacecraft pointed at a dot in the sky. The studio level waits 3 corridors and 1 pressure lock away. You make your way through the habitat's maze-like structure, past the medical bay where Dr. Chen is already reviewing scans, past the communications hub where Yuki monitors the data feeds from Earth orbital relays. The station hums with quiet activity, machinery breathing and filtering and maintaining the bubble of livability that keeps 19 humans alive on a world that killed its own atmosphere eons ago. Your studio occupies a converted storage module, not large but entirely yours, claimed 8 months ago when you first arrived and have been customizing ever since. The door slides open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing your creative sanctuary. The walls are covered with your work, sketches and paintings and digital prints showing the landscape outside from every angle and time of day. Some are realistic renderings of geological formations. Others are more interpretive, abstract responses to the emotional experience of living on Mars, to the weight of distance from home, to the strange beauty of desolation. Natural light filters through a modified porthole, and you've supplemented it with full-spectrum LED panels that approximate Earth sunlight, necessary both for color accuracy and for maintaining circadian health. Your easel stands ready, a folding model designed for space stations, but serving equally well here. Beside it, a work table holds an array of supplies, some shipped from Earth at tremendous cost, others improvised from local resources in ways that would make Renaissance masters nod with understanding. Traditional art supplies on Mars require adaptation and creativity. Watercolors work, technically, but water behaves strangely in low air pressure, evaporating faster than expected, beating differently on paper. You've learned to work quickly, to embrace the unexpected textures that emerge. Acrylic paints function better, their polymer bases less affected by the environmental differences. Oil paints are precious and rare, each tube a luxury that arrived after 8 months in space, but they work almost exactly as they do on Earth once you account for the cold temperatures that make them stiffen. But your most innovative medium comes from Mars itself. You've developed techniques for creating pigments from the regolith, that fine rust-red dust that covers everything outside. Properly processed, filtered, and mixed with binding agents from the 3D printer's material library, Martian regolith produces rich ochres, siennas, and reds that no Earth-based pigment can quite match. There's something powerful about painting Mars with Mars, using the planet's own substance to capture its essence. Your digital workspace occupies the other half of the studio. A high-resolution tablet with stylus for digital painting and sketching. A powerful computer running specialized software for 3D modeling and virtual reality creation. A camera system with multiple lenses, though photography on Mars requires careful consideration of dust protection and radiation effects on sensors. And your prized possession, a pair of VR goggles that let you create immersive experiences, letting people on Earth feel what it's like to stand on Mars without the radiation exposure and existential dread. This morning's goal is clear and weather-dependent. The meteorological forecast predicts good visibility for the next 3 hours before a localized dust storm moves through the region this afternoon. You need to get outside, need to gather visual references from the sketching site you've been cultivating near the northwest perimeter of the Safe Walk Zone. Your current project, a series of large-scale paintings commissioned by the Mars Arts Foundation, attempts to capture the temporal quality of Martian light across different seasons and times of day. You're chasing something ineffable, trying to articulate through color and composition what words struggle to convey. You gather your field kit with practiced efficiency. Sketchpad specially treated to resist dust infiltration, pencils in a sealed case, camera with protective housing, sample containers for collecting interesting geological specimens that might yield new pigments. Everything gets checked twice, because mistakes outside are significantly more consequential than mistakes in a studio. Your tablet goes into a hardened case that protects it from temperature extremes and the omnipresent dust. The EVA preparation room adjoins the studio level, a practical layout that recognizes artists need regular access to the surface. You're not the first artist astronaut. That honor belongs to Alan Bean, who walked on the moon and later painted his experiences. But you're among the first to live off-world for extended periods, part of a new tradition of artist explorers documenting humanity's expansion into space. The EVA suite hangs on its rack like a piece of sculpture, white and orange fabric over hard-shell components, joints articulated with bearing assemblies that would make Leonardo da Vinci weep with joy. This isn't the clunky Apollo-era design or even the bulkier suits used on the International Space Station. Mars suits have evolved, lightweight and flexible while still protecting against vacuum-equivalent pressures, radiation, and temperature extremes that swing from 20 degrees Celsius in sunny spots to minus 125 degrees Celsius in shadows. You begin the suit-up procedure, methodical steps learned through hundreds of hours of training. First, the liquid cooling garment, tight-fitting with tubes that circulate chilled water to manage body heat. The suit's life support can't handle too much temperature differential, so you have to help it along. Over that, the pressure garment, multiple layers of fabric and bladders that maintain 34 kilopascals. Against the near vacuum outside, the hard upper torso assembly comes next, fitting over your head and locking at the waist. Arms slide into sleeves with bearing rings at shoulders and wrists. Gloves attach with positive pressure seals, each click a commitment to the environment you're about to enter. The lower torso and legs are separate, connected by the waist ring. Boots with cleated soles designed for Martian terrain, providing traction on surfaces that range from powder-fine dust to tumbled rock. Each piece of the suit is a marvel of engineering, and you've developed a strange affection for it, this mechanical skin that lets you walk on another planet. You run through the pre-EVA checklist on your suit's heads-up display, watching green indicators light up one by one. Oxygen flow, nominal. Pressure seals, secure. Battery charge, 98%. Communication systems, online. Thermal regulation, active. The helmet comes last, a bubble of polycarbonate with a heads-up display projected onto the inner surface. It seals with a satisfying click, and suddenly you're breathing recycled air. Hearing the gentle hum of the suit's life support systems, the suit pressurizes, fabric stiffening as air fills the bladders. You test the joints, moving arms and legs, ensuring everything flexes properly. The suits are better than they used to be, but they still require effort, still remind you that you're wearing a personal spaceship. Your comm system chirps to life. Artist 1, this is Habitat Control, reading your suit telemetry, all systems nominal. You are clear for airlock procedures. That's Yuki, pulling morning communications duty, her voice professional despite the early hour. Copy! Habitat Control! Beginning airlock entry! Your voice sounds strange in the helmet, slightly muffled and artificial. You've never quite gotten used to it. The inner airlock door cycles open, revealing the small transition chamber that serves as buffer between the habitat's shirt-sleeve environment and the Martian surface. You step inside, movements careful in the pressurized suit. The inner door seals behind you with a solid chunk, and you're alone in the white-walled chamber. The depressurization sequence begins automatically, air bleeding out through vents, pressure dropping from comfortable to merely survivable to nearly nothing. Your suit compensates, maintaining its internal pressure as the chamber pressure falls. The process takes 4 minutes, time enough to run through final checks, to remind yourself of emergency procedures, to feel that familiar spike of adrenaline that comes from preparing to open a door onto an alien world. Through the small window in the outer door, you watch the Martian landscape waiting, patient as stone, ancient as tin. The outer door unseals with a deep thud you feel through your boots rather than hear. The hatch swings open and you step through onto the surface of Mars. The transition never loses its power, that moment when artificial environment gives way to raw planetary reality. The horizon stretches before you, rust-red regolith extending to distant low hills. The sky above a peculiar butterscotch hue from suspended dust particles scattering the morning light. Walking in Martian gravity takes concentration even after months of practice. Each step wants to become a bounce, your Earth-trained muscles applying too much force for the reduced gravitational pull. You've developed a shuffling gait, keeping your feet closer to the ground, maintaining better contact with the surface. The suit adds mass but not weight, creating a strange disconnect between inertia and gravity that makes you feel simultaneously heavy and light. The landscape around Meridiani Station is relatively flat, part of why this location was chosen. Ancient plains of hematite-rich rocks, evidence of water in Mars's distant past, now just geology waiting to tell its story. To the north, low hills break the horizon. To the south, a small crater visible as a subtle bowl in the terrain. East and west, the plain extends toward horizons that curve more noticeably than Earth's because Mars is smaller, its radius roughly half the Earth's. Your boots leave perfect prints in the regolith, sharp-edged in the fine powder that covers everything. There's no wind at the moment, nothing to disturb those footprints, and you find yourself thinking about the boot prints left by Apollo astronauts on the moon. Still there after more than 60 years because there's no weather to erase them. Your tracks will last similarly, at least until the next dust storm scours through and erases all evidence of your passage. The sketching site waits 200 meters from the habitat, marked by small flags that help with navigation when visibility drops. You've claimed this spot as your own over the past months, returning again and again to study how the light changes, how shadows move across the landscape at different times of the Martian day and year. There's a particular outcrop of darker rock, probably basalt, that catches your eye every time, its angular geometry contrasting with the smoother regolith around it. You set up your portable workstation with practiced efficiency, a collapsible stool that folds out from your equipment pack, its legs splaying wide for stability. Your sketchpad goes onto a small easel designed for field use, clipped secure against any unexpected breeze. You take photographs first, documenting the scene from multiple angles, gathering reference material that you'll use later in the studio. The camera's shutter makes no sound in the thin atmosphere, just the visual indication that images are being captured. Then you simply look, taking time to observe, to let the landscape sink into your consciousness. This is the part of the artistic process that can't be rushed, the absorption of place and light and mood that precedes creation. The Martian surface isn't monotonously red as popular media sometimes suggests. There are subtle variations, shades ranging from orange-brown to rusty ochre to deep sienna. The rocks show different colors, darker basalts and lighter sedimentary deposits. Shadows aren't black, but filled with reflected light from dust in the atmosphere, creating a soft blue-gray that contrasts beautifully with the warm-toned regolith. The sun hangs at about 30 degrees above the horizon now, climbing toward its midday peak. It looks smaller than Earth's sun, a disk roughly 2/3 the diameter, providing less light and less warmth. The shadows it casts are sharper than Earth shadows, because there's less atmospheric scattering, less of that diffused light that softens edges. You've learned to think about these differences when planning compositions, the way Martian light creates starker contrasts, more dramatic transitions between light and dark areas. You begin sketching, working quickly, because hand control in EVA gloves isn't perfect. The pencil feels clumsy through the suit's thickness, but you've adapted, learned to work with broader strokes, to focus on gesture and composition rather than fine detail. These field sketches aren't meant to be finished works, but rather notes, visual shorthand that captures essential information about shapes, values, and spatial relationships. Later, in the studio, you'll translate these sketches into more refined pieces. The landscape before you resolves into shapes and planes. The foreground, that weathered basalt outcrop with its angular edges and dark surfaces. Middle ground, The undulating plain of regolith punctuated by small stones. Background, the low hills perhaps 15 kilometers distant, hazy in the atmospheric dust, their forms simplified by distance into geometric suggestions. And above it all, that strange Martian sky. Neither the deep blue of Earth nor the black of space, but something in between. Your mind works to understand the spatial relationships, the way depth is conveyed differently here. On Earth, atmospheric perspective creates distinct foreground, middle ground, and background through value shifts and color changes. On Mars, with its thin atmosphere, the effect is more subtle. Distance is communicated more through scale changes and overlapping forms than through the atmospheric fading Earth artists take for granted. You're essentially relearning landscape painting, adapting techniques developed over centuries to a planetary environment that no human had experienced until a few years ago. A dust devil spins into view perhaps a kilometer to your east, a tall column of suspended particles rotating in the morning warmth. Differential. You watch it dance across the plain, a miniature tornado of rust-colored dust that rises perhaps 500 meters into the air. It's beautiful in its own way, this evidence of atmospheric dynamics, proof that Mars is a living world in its own fashion, still actively weathering and changing despite its aged appearance. You sketch it quickly, wanting to capture the gesture and movement before it dissipates. Your suit's environmental display shows external temperature rising slowly, from -70 to -63 degrees Celsius, as solar radiation heats the surface. Inside the suit, your liquid cooling system works to maintain comfortable 20 degrees, whisking away the heat your body generates. The life support pack on your back hums softly, a vibration you feel through the suit's torso, processing carbon dioxide from your breath and adding fresh oxygen from the storage tanks. Every breath you take, every movement you make, is possible only because of this technological marvel you're wearing. Time behaves differently out here. Without the constant digital interruptions of Earth life, without the steady stream of notifications and messages, you can sink into a state of deep focus that's become rare in modern civilization. The only sound is your own breathing and the occasional beep from suit systems. The world reduces to visual information and the slow, deliberate process of observation and recording. It's meditative, this practice of looking and translating what you see into marks on paper. You work through the sketchpad's first sheet, capturing the overall composition. Then a second sheet for studies of the basalt outcrop, understanding its specific forms and textures. A third sheet for value studies, mapping out where the lightest and darkest areas fall, planning the tonal structure of paintings you'll create later. This is the foundation work, the careful observation and note-taking that supports more expressive work back in the studio. A small pile of interesting rocks catches your attention, tumbled together by some ancient process, perhaps water flow, billions of years ago, or maybe just the slow erosion of wind and temperature change. You crouch carefully, the suit's joints resisting the movement, and examine them more closely. One piece shows interesting layering, alternating bands of lighter and darker material. Another has a weathered surface with small pits and vugs. These might yield interesting pigments if crushed and processed properly. You collect samples in your specimen containers, labeling each with location data that appears in your heads-up display. The communications system chirps in your helmet. Artist 1, Habitat Control. You've been surface for 97 minutes. Recommend beginning return procedures to allow margin before predicted dust storm arrival. You acknowledge the call, somewhat reluctant to leave. There's always more to see, more to document, but the safety margins exist for good reasons. The dust storms here can reduce visibility to near zero within minutes, and while the suit's navigation system could guide you back, there's no reason to take unnecessary risks. You pack up your equipment, folding the easel and stool, securing everything in your equipment pack. One last look around, one last moment of simply being present on the Martian surface, and then you turn back toward the habitat. The walk back provides different views, different angles on the landscape. You notice things you missed on the way out, the way certain rocks catch the light, an interesting ripple pattern in the regolith that suggests wind action. Your photographer's eye is always active, always composing, always looking for that perfect combination of elements that makes an image resonate. You snap photographs as you walk, building your visual library, collecting raw material for future work. The habitat grows larger as you approach, a cluster of white cylindrical modules, with small ports and antennae sprouting from their surfaces. Solar panels glint in the sunlight, their blue-black photovoltaic cells tracking the sun's movement. The communications dish points perpetually toward Earth, or rather toward where Earth will be by the time any signal arrives, accounting for the 8 to 22-minute delay depending on orbital positions. From this angle, the human settlement looks simultaneously impressive and fragile, a tiny outpost of habitability in the vast Martian emptiness. You cycle through the airlock again, the process reversed. Outer door sealed, repressurization sequence initiated, air hissing back into the chamber. The suit relaxes as external pressure rises, fabric loosening as the pressure differential decreases. Inner door unseals, and you step back into the warm air of the habitat, immediately feeling the temperature difference, even through the suit layers. The de-suit procedure mirrors suit up, but requires more attention to dust management. Martian regolith is insidious, clinging to every surface through electrostatic charge, working its way into joints and seals. You brush down the suit carefully with special brushes, vacuum attachments sucking up the disturbed dust, preventing it from infiltrating the habitat. The regolith isn't toxic exactly, but it contains perchlorets that are harmful if inhaled or ingested, and the fine particles can damage equipment with remarkable efficiency. Helmet off first, breathing real air again, the subtle difference in smell and taste immediately noticeable. The suit's recycled air has a sterile quality, slightly metallic. The habitat's atmosphere smells lived in, traces of food and coffee, and the faint green scent from the hydroponic gardens. You continue the de-suit process, removing gloves, disconnecting the hard upper torso, peeling away the pressure garment. Your cooling garment is damp with sweat despite the temperature regulation system, evidence of the physical work involved in EVA operations. Fresh clothes feel wonderful, soft and clean against your skin. You dispose of the cooling garment in the laundry system, hang the suit components on their designated racks for maintenance check, and finally allow yourself to relax. The EVA was successful, reference materials gathered, progress made on the ongoing project of documenting Martian landscapes. You feel that satisfaction that comes from productive work, from having accomplished something meaningful. The galley offers hydration and a quick snack, important after the physical exertion of surface operations. You grab a squeeze pouch of sports drink designed to replenish electrolytes and provide easy calories, and find a seat near the windows. The predicted dust storm is visible now in the distance, a brown-orange wall of suspended particles moving across the plain. It looks like something biblical, a wall of dust kilometers high, advancing at perhaps 40 kilometers per hour. On Earth, such a storm would be devastating, but Mars's thin atmosphere means the winds, while fast, carry less kinetic energy. The storm will reduce visibility and maybe shake the habitat slightly, but it poses no real danger to the station. Dr. Chen joins you at the window, carrying her own lunch pack. Did you get what you needed outside? Good session, you reply. The morning light was perfect. Got some excellent reference material for the commission pieces. She nods, watching the approaching storm with professional interest. I should check on the external sensor package before that hits, make sure everything's properly sealed. You chat about mundane things, the conversational rhythm of people who've lived in close quarters for months. Dr. Chen mentions that the greenhouse team successfully propagated a new batch of tomatoes, which means fresh vegetables in a few weeks. You tell her about the art class this evening, asking if she plans to attend. She's been working on a watercolor series of the base from different angles. Quite good, actually, with an eye for architectural detail. The storm arrives with surprising speed, the wall of dust suddenly upon the habitat. Visibility drops to perhaps 20 meters, the landscape outside disappearing into a brown murk. The habitat's structure groans slightly as winds push against it, but the engineers built these modules to withstand much worse. Inside, lights flicker slightly as solar panels lose efficiency in the reduced light, the system automatically drawing from battery reserves. The storm will pass in a few hours, but for now, Mars reminds you that you're guests here, barely tolerated visitors, on a world that doesn't need or want human presence. The afternoon unfolds according to the rhythm you've established over months of Martian residence. After the storm passes and visibility returns, you retreat to your studio to begin translating this morning's fieldwork into more developed pieces. The sketches come out of your bag first, arranged on the work table for review. They're rough but contain the essential information you need: composition structures and value patterns, notes about colors and atmospheric conditions. You power up your digital workspace, the tablet's screen a rectangle of light in the studio's gentle illumination. The photographs from this morning load into your editing software, and you begin the process of organizing, selecting, and processing. Some images need exposure adjustment to better match how the scene appeared to your eyes. Others get cropped to stronger compositions. A few go into a folder marked pigment sources, showing interesting rocks that might yield new colors when properly processed. The commission work occupies the center of your attention now. The Mars Arts Foundation back in Houston has contracted for a series of 12 large-scale paintings, one for each month of the Martian year, documenting the seasonal changes in light and landscape at this location. You're 4 paintings into the series, each one requiring weeks of work layered between other responsibilities. The current piece, representing late northern spring, exists in a partially complete state on your main easel. The canvas measures 1 meter by 1.5 meters, substantial by Earth standards and truly ambitious on Mars, where every gram of material had to be shipped at tremendous cost. The Foundation covers these expenses, understanding that original artwork created on another planet represents both artistic achievement and historical artifact. Future generations will look at these paintings as documents of humanity's first permanent off-world settlement, the way we now study early colonial American art for insights into that historical moment. You've blocked in the basic composition already, the broad shapes and value structure established. Now comes the more refined work, building up layers of paint, adjusting colors, refining edges and transitions. You work in acrylics primarily, their fast-drying time and versatility making them ideal for the Mars environment. The palette today focuses on the warm end of the spectrum, ochres and siennas, and rusty reds that characterize the Martian surface, punctuated by cool blue-grays in the shadows. Mixing colors on Mars requires both traditional knowledge and improvisational thinking. You have Earth-made paints shipped in quarterly supply runs, standard artist acrylics in primary colors, and earth tones. But you've also developed your Martian pigments, colors, that can only be mixed here using local resources. The regolith provides iron oxide reds, more intense than any Earth-based sienna. Certain rock formations, when crushed and processed, yield colors ranging from deep burgundy to pale terracotta. The process of making Martian pigments has become its own art form. You collect interesting geological samples during EVAs, test them in small batches, grind them in a makeshift mortar you fabricated from spare parts. The resulting powders get mixed with acrylic medium to create usable paint, and the colors are unlike anything available from Earth manufacturers. There's something profound about painting Mars with Mars, using the planet's own substance to create images of itself. You work steadily, losing track of time in the way that happens when a painting reaches that magic state where it starts to work. The studio becomes a bubble of concentration, the rest of the habitat fading from awareness. Brush meets canvas, color flows and blends, shapes emerge and solidify. You're not just recording what you saw this morning, you're interpreting it, responding emotionally and intellectually to the experience of standing on another world. The painting develops through layers and passages. You work from large shapes to smaller details, establishing the big relationships first before worrying about specifics. The distant hills get suggested with simplified forms and atmospheric color shifts. The middle ground plane receives more attention, variations in the regolith's color, and texture creating subtle depth. The foreground basalt outcrop demands careful observation translated into paint, each plane of its weathered surface catching light differently, creating a structure of light and shadow that describes its three-dimensional form. Time measurements here use both Earth time and Martian time, creating a strange double awareness. Your body knows it's been 4 Earth hours since lunch, but the station clock shows it's been roughly 4 hours and 10 minutes of Martian time. This temporal drift accumulates, the extra 39 minutes of each sol adding up over weeks and months, creating a slow desynchronization from Earth rhythms that affects everything from sleep patterns to communication scheduling. A knock on your studio door interrupts the flow state. "Enter," you call, not looking up from the canvas. Pavel pokes his head in, acoustic guitar in hand. "I am not disturbing?" "Not at all. Just working on the commission series." He steps inside, examining your work in progress with genuine interest. Pavel isn't an artist himself, but he appreciates art, often sits in your studio during breaks to watch you work and talk about everything except engineering and life support systems. His guitar provides many of the soundtrack moments that make the habitat feel less like a survival pod and more like a home. "The colors are very beautiful," he says in his careful English, accent softening the consonants. "It captures something. I don't know the word. The loneliness, but also the strength of this place." You nod, pleased. That's exactly what you're trying to convey, that dual quality of Mars, its simultaneous desolation and power. The planet doesn't need humans, doesn't want us here, but it tolerates our presence with a kind of austere dignity. Pavel finds a seat on your spare stool, settling the guitar across his lap. "I think you should join us for dinner tonight. Kenji is cooking. He says he has something special." The promise of something special from Kenji's repertoire is tempting. He's the closest thing the station has to a gourmet chef, able to coax surprisingly good flavors from the limited ingredients available. "What time?" 1900 hours, and do not forget you have the art class after. You hadn't forgotten, but the reminder is appreciated. The art class has become one of the week's highlights. A few hours where crew members can try their hands at creative expression under your guidance. It's therapy disguised as education, giving people a productive outlet for the psychological stress of isolation and confinement. Pavel begins playing softly, picking out a melody that sounds vaguely Russian, perhaps a folk song from his childhood in Siberia. The music fills the studio, giving the space an entirely different quality, making it feel less like work and more like communal experience. You continue painting while he plays, the two creative processes existing comfortably alongside each other. "You know," Pavel says between songs, "I think maybe the art is the most important thing we do here. More important than the science, even." You glance at him questioning. "The science, it will be understood on Earth. The data, the measurements, the rock samples. These are objective, yes? But your paintings, they tell something else. They show what it feels like to be here. That cannot be measured or calculated." He's right, and it's something you've been thinking about increasingly. Your role here isn't just documentary, it's interpretive. You're trying to capture the subjective experience of Mars, the emotional reality that exists alongside the scientific data. Future generations who might never visit Mars themselves will see your paintings and understand something essential about what it meant to be among the first humans to live here permanently. The afternoon continues its gentle progression. Pavel eventually leaves to attend to his own responsibilities, the quiet returning to the studio. You work until your eyes start to tire, knowing that pushing too far leads to mistakes that take hours to correct. The painting is progressing well, perhaps another week of work, before this piece is complete enough to photograph and transmit to Earth for the Foundation's review. You clean brushes with careful attention, precious materials treated with appropriate respect. The water you use for cleaning goes through a filtration system before returning to the habitat's general supply. Nothing wasted, everything reused. You've become conscious of resource consumption in ways that would have seemed neurotic on Earth, but here simply represent sensible practice. The evening meal gathers the crew. In the galley, all 17 humans currently comprising Meridiani Station's population. The communal meal is part of mission protocol, recognition that humans are social creatures and that isolation can be psychologically destructive without regular interpersonal contact. Kenji has indeed created something special, a curry approximation made with synthesized protein, hydroponically grown vegetables, and spices carefully rationed from Earth supplies. Conversation flows around the table, multiple threads weaving together, people speaking over each other in the comfortable chaos of a close-knit community. Dr. Chen discusses the latest data from Perseverance rover still operating in Jezero Crater. Yuki mentions that the next supply ship from Earth is ahead of schedule, should arrive in 3 weeks instead of 4. Someone jokes about the toilet in Module 2 making strange noises again, which launches Pavel into an extended explanation of waste processing systems that has everyone laughing despite the unappetizing topic. You contribute your own observations about the morning's EVA, describing the dust devil you sketched and the interesting rock formations near the north perimeter. A few people ask questions about your work, genuinely curious about your artistic process. This isn't Earth where people pretend to understand or appreciate art out of politeness. Here, your work matters viscerally, serving as visual link to the world everyone left behind, and as documentation of the new world you're all creating together. After dinner, you help with cleanup duty, everyone rotating through maintenance tasks. The dishes get scraped and sorted, food waste going to the composting system that will eventually help fertilize the greenhouses, hydroponic gardens. It's all connected here, all circular. Waste from one system becoming resource for another. Living on Mars teaches systems thinking in the most practical possible way. The art class meets in a converted storage module that serves as community space, recreation room, and chapel all at once. You arrive early to set up supplies, laying out the watercolor kits and paper you've been carefully rationing for this weekly gathering. 7 people have signed up for tonight's session, a good turnout considering everyone's busy schedules. Your students arrive gradually, tired from their own long workdays but eager for this creative break. There's Amara, the physician who's been working on a series of botanical studies of the greenhouse plants. Yuki, the communications specialist, who's surprisingly talented with landscapes. 2 of the engineers, Marcus and Devi, who approach watercolor with the same methodical precision they apply to their technical work. And 3 others, relative beginners who are discovering that making art provides psychological relief they didn't know they needed. You've structured tonight's lesson around atmospheric perspective, appropriate given the Martian environment. Everyone sets up at the long table, water jars filled, paint squeezed into pallets, brushes ready. You demonstrate on your own sheet, showing how to create the illusion of distance through value changes and edge control, explaining how Mars's thinner atmosphere affects these traditional techniques. On Earth, you explain while painting, the atmosphere causes significant shifts in value and color as objects recede into the distance. Mountains 10 kilometers away appear lighter and bluer than mountains nearby. Here on Mars, that effect is much more subtle. The atmosphere is only 1% as thick as Earth's. The class works quietly, everyone focused on their own compositions. You move around the table offering guidance, suggesting where someone might lighten a wash or sharpen an edge, pointing out successful passages that deserve to be pushed further. Teaching art to non-artists is rewarding in specific ways, watching people discover that they can create something meaningful with their own hands. Marcus, the habitually precise engineer, struggles with watercolor's fluid unpredictability. His painting wants to be tight and controlled, but watercolor demands a certain surrender to happy accidents. You encourage him to embrace the medium's tendency towards soft edges and atmospheric effects, to let water do some of the work rather than fighting it for complete control. Yuki, conversely, works with assured confidence, her brush dancing across paper creating loose, evocative suggestions of landscape rather than tight descriptions. Her paintings have a Japanese quality, economy of means, and sensitivity to negative space that must come from cultural background and aesthetic tradition. Dr. Amara focuses intently on her botanical study, rendering one of the greenhouse's tomato plants with scientific accuracy, but also genuine tenderness. Her training as a physician shows in her attention to structure and in organic form, understanding how things grow and function, informing how she depicts them. The class runs 2 hours, time evaporating in the focused attention creative work demands. By the end, everyone has completed at least 1 small painting. Some have done 2 or 3 studies. You gather the paintings for a group critique, laying them out on the table so everyone can see everyone else's work. The critique process is gentle, emphasizing what works rather than dwelling on problems. You point out successful color harmonies, interesting compositional choices, moments where someone has captured something essential about the Martian landscape. People appreciate seeing their efforts taken seriously, treated as legitimate creative expression rather than mere hobby activity. Remember, you tell them as class winds down, none of us chose easy lives. We chose to come here, to leave Earth behind because we believed this mattered. Your art is part of that same impulse, that drive to make meaning, to create something where nothing existed before. The paintings you're making here in this moment, they're part of Mars's history now, part of humanity's story of reaching out beyond our home world. The sentiment isn't mere encouragement, you mean it literally. These watercolors painted by amateur artists on a Tuesday evening in a habitat on Mars will eventually make their way into archives, preserved as artifacts of this historical moment when humans first learned to live permanently on another planet. After class, you linger to clean up, rinsing brushes and collecting papers, returning supplies to their careful organization. A few students stay to help, the comfortable silence of shared purpose. Through the module's small window, the Martian night has arrived, though the distinction between day and night is less dramatic here than on Earth. The sun has set, but ambient light from dust in the atmosphere creates a twilight that lingers for an hour, the sky transitioning through shades of rose and purple, before finally darkening to deep blue-black. The evening's final scheduled activity is the daily medical check, 15 minutes with Dr. Chen, for vital signs monitoring and psychological assessment. You find her in the medical bay, a compact space packed with diagnostic equipment and pharmaceutical supplies. She gestures to the examination chair, and you settle in while she attaches various sensors. Blood pressure's good, she notes, watching the display. Heart rate normal. Oxygen saturation excellent. She makes notes on her tablet, the daily record that gets transmitted to Earth for medical team review. How are you feeling psychologically? Any anxiety? Trouble sleeping? Some sleep disruption, you admit, but that seems normal given the soul timing. She nods. We're all dealing with that. The 39-minute drift makes it hard to maintain consistent circadian rhythms. She leans back, considering you with a physician's trained observation. You seem to be adapting well overall. The art practice helps? Definitely. It gives structure to my days, purpose, beyond just survival. That's important. She makes another note. Too many people focus only on the physical challenges of living here, the radiation exposure and bone loss and all that. But the psychological aspect is equally critical. We can protect bodies with technology, but minds require different care. Your art classes, Pavel's music, the community meals, these things are as essential as life support systems. The conversation drifts to other topics. Medical bay transitioning from clinical space to informal gathering spot. This happens often on Meridiani Station. The formal structure of mission protocols dissolving into the warmer reality of human connection. You talk about Earth, about families you miss, about the strange experience of looking at your home planet through a telescope, seeing it as a blue dot among the stars. Do you think you'll stay? Dr. Chen asks suddenly. When your contract expires? The question hangs in the air, weighted with implications. Your current agreement covers 2 Earth years, with option to renew for another 2. After that, assuming you survive and remain healthy, the choice becomes more complex. Do you return to Earth trying to readjust to higher gravity in a world that's continued without you? Or do you stay here, committing to becoming something new, a Martian rather than an Earthling visiting Mars? I don't know, you answer honestly. Some days I can't imagine leaving. The work I'm doing here, it feels essential in a way my art never did on Earth. But other days the isolation weighs heavy, and I fantasize about walking on a beach, feeling wind that's not filtered through a spacesuit, seeing green everywhere instead of red. She nods understanding. We're all wrestling with that question. This place changes you. Once you've stood on Mars, watched Earth rise in the sky like a morning star, it's hard to go back to thinking of humanity as a single-planet species. The medical check complete, you're released with the usual reminders to maintain exercise routines and take your daily supplements, the vitamins and calcium and other compounds that help counteract Mars's effects on human physiology. You make your way through the habitat's corridors, passing crew members in the various states of their own evening routines. Some head to the gym for mandatory exercise, others retreat to private quarters for sleep. The station never truly quiets, machinery running constantly, life support systems humming, but there's a settling, a downshift to night mode. Your own evening ritual begins with a thorough shower, precious hot water cascading over tired muscles. The shower is a recent luxury, installed 6 months ago after the water recycling system proved more efficient than projections. Before that, everyone made do with sponge baths and careful water rationing. The psychological benefit of actual showers proved significant enough that mission planners approved the upgrade. Clean and dressed in sleeping clothes, you return to your quarters for the final hours before sleep. Your personal space has accumulated 8 months of customization, small touches that make it feel like home rather than just a sleeping pod. Photographs cover one wall, images of family and friends back on Earth, your old studio in Oakland, Golden Gate Bridge at sunset. Another wall displays your own artwork, pieces created here on Mars, constant reminder of why you're here. The tablet serves for evening communication with Earth, the time delay making real conversation impossible but allowing for recorded video messages that maintain connections across the distance. You have several messages waiting, recorded hours ago and transmitted during the last communications window. Your sister from Boston talking about her kids and their school activities, asking questions about what you eat and whether you're staying warm. A friend from art school, now teaching at a university in Chicago, wanting to know about pigments and whether Martian light really does make colors look different. You record your own responses, talking to the camera about your day, about the morning EVA and the paintings in progress in the art class. You keep the tone light, knowing your family worries about you despite all the safety reassurances. You don't mention the psychological weight of isolation, or the constant background awareness of living in an environment that would kill you in minutes, without technological mediation. Instead, you talk about the beauty you've been discovering, the way sunset light transforms the landscape, the satisfaction of creating new pigments from Martian rocks. The messages upload to the communication queue. Will transmit during tonight's scheduled Earthlink, arriving 8 to 22 minutes later depending on current orbital distances. Your sister will watch tomorrow morning, your friend probably in her office between classes. The delay makes conversations feel strange, exchanges stretched across time as well as space. But it's the best available connection to the lives you left behind. Recreational time fills the next hour, that liminal space between productive work and sleep. You pull up a book on your tablet, a novel set in Renaissance Florence, a world of beauty and plague and political intrigue that feels impossibly distant from your current reality. Reading provides escape, a way to inhabit other minds and other times, though you find your attention wandering, drawn back to the small window and the Martian night beyond. The stars are extraordinary here, without Earth's thick atmosphere to obscure them. They don't twinkle, no atmospheric turbulence to cause that characteristic sparkle. Instead, they burn, steady and bright, thousands of points of light against the absolute black of space. You can see the Milky Way clearly, that river of stars marking our galaxy's disk, along with nebulae and clusters and distant galaxies reduced to faint smudges. You pull up your stargazing app, holding the tablet toward the window, letting it identify what you're seeing. There's Jupiter, unmistakable even to the naked eye, its 4 largest moons visible as tiny dots of light around the planet's bright disk. There's Saturn, though you can't resolve the rings without the telescope down in the observatory module. And there, that particular bright star, that's Earth, your home world reduced to a point of light, everyone and everything you've ever known compressed to a cosmic pixel. The telescope beckons, and you make your way to the observatory module, a small dome added to the habitat 6 months into the mission, specifically for astronomical observation. The telescope itself is modest by research standards but adequate for visual observation. A 20-centimeter refractor that provides stunning views of planets and deep sky objects. You enter the dome, lights already dim to preserve night vision, and settle into the observer's chair. The telescope's control system links to your tablet, letting you select targets from a database of interesting objects. Tonight you choose Mars's 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, natural satellites that orbit far lower and faster than Earth's moon. Phobos appears first in the eyepiece, a lumpy potato of a moon, heavily cratered, gray and lifeless. It orbits only 6,000 kilometers above Mars's surface, completing 3 orbits every Martian day, rising in the west and setting in the east, contrary to normal celestial motion. It's not much larger than Manhattan, a captured asteroid, rather than a proper moon, but it's your moon now, part of the Martian sky you've learned to navigate. Deimos follows, even smaller and more distant, a second captured asteroid keeping Phobos company. Together they provide poor illumination, nothing like Earth's full moon, but they mark time in their rapid passages, helpful for navigation during EVAs when their positions can be used for orientation. The telescope turns next to Jupiter, the planet's massive bulk filling the eyepiece with bands of clouds, and the distinctive Great Red Spot, a storm larger than Earth that's been raging for centuries. The 4 Galilean moons string out in a line, Io closest to the planet, then Europa with its icy shell hiding a subsurface ocean, then Ganymede and Callisto. You sketch them quickly in a dedicated astronomy notebook, noting positions and appearance, building up a record of observations that might serve future artwork. An alert on your tablet reminds you that you have other tasks tonight, specifically uploading artwork images to the Mars Arts Foundation server for monthly review. The commission work requires regular check-ins, ensuring you're staying on schedule and meeting the project's requirements. You switch the telescope to auto-tracking a predetermined deep sky target and return to your quarters to handle the administrative side of being an off-world artist. The file upload process is tedious, limited by bandwidth constraints and the need to compress images enough to transmit efficiently while maintaining sufficient quality for professional review. You photograph the latest painting from multiple angles, capturing color accuracy and surface texture as best as digital reproduction allows. The images queue for transmission during the next scheduled communications window, joining messages and scientific data in the constant stream of information flowing between Mars and Earth. Your daily journal waits, a practice you've maintained religiously since landing. Part diary, part artwork documentation, part philosophical reflection. The journal has become essential for processing the experience of living here. You write about the morning's EVA, describing the light quality and the feeling of walking across ancient plains that haven't seen liquid water in billions of years. You write about the art class, about the satisfaction of watching people discover creative capacities they didn't know they possessed. And you write about the larger questions that haunt quiet moments. What does it mean to be human on another world? Are you still fully human? Or has Mars begun to change you into something new? A hybrid creature adapted to low gravity and recycled air and horizons that curve too sharply? If you stay here, if you never return to Earth, will you eventually forget what rain feels like, what trees smell like, how grass moves in wind? The philosophical territory is well trodden among the crew. Everyone grapples with similar questions, each person processing the experience through their own lens. For you, the art provides a framework for understanding, a way of metabolizing the strangeness of Mars into images and colors, translating lived experience into visual language that might help others understand. The sleep medication sits on your shelf, prescribed for everyone to counteract the circadian disruption of the 39-minute sol extension. You take the small pill with water, knowing it will ease you into sleep without the grogginess that plagued early formulations. The bed feels welcoming after the long day, the mattress firm enough for proper support in low gravity. You set your alarm for 7 hours hence, allowing for a full sleep cycle that will hopefully leave you rested for tomorrow's tasks. The schedule shows a greenhouse shift in the morning, everyone rotating through agricultural duty to maintain the food production system. Afternoon brings more studio time, progress on the commission work, and experimentation with new pigment formulations. Evening includes a scheduled video conference with the Mars Arts Foundation board, discussing plans for a gallery exhibition of your work planned for 6 months from now. The lights dim to dark, blackout mode for proper sleep. Through your small window, stars shine steadily, and somewhere among them Earth continues its ancient orbit, home to 8 billion people who can't imagine what you experience every day. You think about them, about the vast majority of humanity who will live and die on one planet, who will never know what it's like to see their home world from another world, and you feel both privileged and profoundly isolated. Sleep comes gradually, consciousness dissolving into dreams that mix, Mars and Earth into surreal hybrids. You dream of red beaches where rust-colored waves break against stone shores. You dream of forests where the trees grow from Martian regolith and their leaves glow with strange luminescence. You dream of walking without a spacesuit, breathing thin air that somehow sustains you, moving through landscapes that shift between familiar and utterly alien. The dreams carry you through the night, through 7 hours of darkness, while Mars rotates beneath a spray of stars. While you sleep, automated systems monitor air quality and temperature, adjust humidity levels, filter and recycle water. The habitat breathes and hums, keeping you alive without conscious thought. Technology and engineering replacing the Earth's natural life support with artificial equivalents that work well enough, but never quite feel completely reliable. Tomorrow will bring another sol, another rotation of Mars beneath the distant sun, another day of living on the edge between survival and discovery, between human fragility and human capability, another day of making art on a world that has never known art before, documenting an experience so new that language struggles to encompass it adequately. But tonight, in this moment between waking and sleeping, between Earth's gravity and Mars's lighter pull, between past and future, you simply exist. An artist on Mars, a human being doing impossible things in impossible places, a small spark of consciousness and creativity burning briefly against the vast darkness of space, making marks and mixing colors and trying to capture something essential about what it means to be here, now, alive on another world. The station settles into its night rhythm. Crew members sleep in their individual pods, dreaming their own dreams of home and distance. Machines continue their tireless work. Mars rotates toward another dawn. And somewhere in the red dust outside, the wind stirs, ancient and patient, unmoved by the temporary presence of these strange beings who have come so far to stand on its surface. The universe continues its expansion, galaxies retreating from each other at incomprehensible velocities, stars burning through their fuel in slow nuclear fire, planets wheeling through their orbits in the eternal dance of gravity and momentum. And here, on this small, rust-colored world, orbiting a yellow dwarf star in an unremarkable corner of a common spiral galaxy, humans sleep and dream and wake and create, adding their small contribution to the cosmos's vast story. Tomorrow the sun will rise again 39 minutes later than Earth's clocks expect, but right on time for Mars. The light will paint the landscape in shades of amber and copper and rust. And you will wake, will suit up, will step outside to see what new beauty the planet has to offer, what new challenge it presents to your understanding and your ability to translate experience into art. For now, though, sleep claims you completely, carrying you deep into unconsciousness where the concerns of survival and creativity dissolve into the simple biological necessity of rest. Your breathing slows and deepens. Your muscles relax fully for the first time since morning. Your mind releases its grip on waking thoughts and drifts into the strange landscapes that dreams create. And Mars continues its rotation, carrying you through the night, through another 39 minutes and 35 seconds of time that wouldn't exist if you'd stayed on Earth, time unique to this planet and its rhythms, time that accumulates sol by sol into a new kind of existence, a new way of being human that doesn't follow Earth's ancient patterns, but instead adapts to Martian realities. Good night, traveler. Rest well in your small metal bubble of air and warmth. Tomorrow brings new work, new light, new opportunities to understand and document and create. The red planet waits patiently outside, neither hostile nor welcoming, simply itself. Ancient stone and thin air and dust that once flowed with rivers now vanished into history. And somewhere across the vast darkness, Earth continues its own rotation, night and day cycling in the familiar 24-hour rhythm. People waking and sleeping and living their lives under skies you'll never see again unless you choose to return. But that's tomorrow's question, tomorrow's decision. Tonight you simply sleep, an artist dreaming on Mars, creating new visions in the darkness behind closed eyes, adding your dreams to the countless human dreams that have imagined other worlds before you dared to actually go there. The station's environmental systems hum their lullaby of civilization, maintained against vacuum. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. Mars breathes dust and dreams of water long gone. And you, small and human and impossibly far from home, sleep soundly in the night, gathering strength for another day of making art where art has never been made before, of being human where humans were never meant to be. Sleep well. Dream deeply. Tomorrow, the rust-red world waits for you to interpret it again in paint and line and color, to add another layer to the growing record of human presence on Mars, to contribute your vision to the story we're writing together among the stars. If you enjoyed this journey to Mars, please like and subscribe. Your support helps me create more of these long-form sleep stories exploring history, possibility, and the human experience across time and space. Sweet dreams, and may you wake refreshed from your Martian rest.